My name is Stephen Chanock, MD. I am the director of the Division of Cancer Epidemiology and Genetics in the National Cancer Institute. It's one of the two intramural programs, and I've been at the National Cancer Institute for 31 and a half years. I went to college and studied music and thought I would never do medicine. As I finished, I became very interested and decided to go into medicine. And it was a very unusual and bittersweet moment. I was accepted to go to Harvard Medical School. I was living in France and England studying music. And then the next day, my older brother, my only brother, calls to tell me he has a pediatric cancer, synovial cell sarcoma. So we come back, and my entire first year of medical school was shuttling between Boston and Washington and checking on my beloved brother, who was my best friend, who unfortunately succumbed to the disease within a year. That experience of being in the National Cancer Institute, where he was treated by Phil Pizzo, who eventually recruited me after I finished all my training to come back, was really absolutely instrumental in my career decision. I knew I wanted to do something in pediatric cancer, and I wanted to be part of the fight against cancer. And, you know, at times it can be tough, but for the first 10 years, I did a lot of clinical work on the very wards that my brother was on, and I visited as a sibling and watched him die. And I felt that I had to do something, and I dedicated my life to doing that. I'd say my career over the last 25 years has really been focused on sort of two fundamental questions. One is, what is it about the human genome and the variation in the human genome that's important for cancer risk? Why does somebody get cancer and someone else not get it? Why do two people with breast cancer have very different outcomes? The genome doesn't sit there slowly doing nothing. It does a lot. And so this notion of susceptibility to cancer, we're all susceptible in different ways, and each of us in our millions of small variants that are shared, but the patterns are different, have carburetors that are all set at slightly different levels, and some are really accelerated by certain kinds of events that can drive carcinogenesis, whether they're environmentally or by chance, and others are more protective. Why is it that we're protected, that 2/3 of us are not going to have cancer? So again, how much of that is the genome and the genetics teaching us how and in what way the errors that take place in the replication in each cell are either corrected or not corrected? So I'm very involved in running studies now looking at survivors from the Chernobyl accident who developed cancer, and what is it about the radiation and how do the signatures, or how do the the vestiges of the radiation either drive or continue to be seen in those individuals who develop cancer and those who don't. So these kinds of environmental questions are really important. So together that led me from being much more sort of clinical and molecular in the laboratory to moving into the population sciences, where I've really spent a lot more of my time in the last 20 years putting together a big consortium using genetics in populations and in well-designed studies to understand the risk of the genome, but also the interactions with the environment, and to run a large program of epidemiologists and geneticists and statisticians and lab people all working together. So it's a very exciting time. I'm a proud member of FAACR, and I appreciate some of the awards that I've gotten, but more importantly, I appreciate the opportunity to interact with others and have the FAACR be a very important instrument in bringing cancer research globally together, just not nationally. There's a forum to bring people together. It's really essential. And the way in which we solve, again, the complexity of the conundrum of cancer is by team science. And that means you got to roll up your sleeves, and you got to argue, you got to disagree, and you have to look for consensus, which isn't always easy in science.